Hey guys, welcome back to Conejo Valley Visionaries. This week's episode is going to be a little bit different. I'm recording this on Tuesday, March 17th, and we are a week out before the second annual Female Founders event. And I thought it might be interesting to kind of give a little bit of behind the scenes of this event and where we're at a week out before the second annual version of it. So, just a little background. My name is Cristina Dennstedt. I started this podcast, Conejo Valley Visionaries, 2 years ago. Our first episode aired on February 1st, 2024. And last year in 2025, I went into the year thinking, the podcast has been a great way to highlight and spotlight community leaders and business owners in the Conejo Valley. But I felt that there was this desire from the community that I sort of built on the Instagram, on social media, who wanted to have an IRL experience. And what a little bit about me, I am from Orlando, Florida originally, and moved out to California to study at USC. I wanted to study broadcast journalism. My childhood dream was to be Katie Couric on the Today Show. And so I came out to USC to study that and went into broadcast journalism, but ultimately decided I did not have the desire or perseverance to work in a small town television station, as was what you had to do back in the day to become a broadcast journalist. And I think still probably today as well. So I decided to go into marketing. Ultimately, I moved to New York City when I graduated college to work in fashion. And that's where I started my career in New York. I was there for 12 years and have worked in marketing ever since, but a lot of in culinary or tech. And anyways, when I got married, moved to Venice to start a family, got pregnant with twins. So quickly started a family. I was working for a company out here in Thousand Oaks called Thermomix, which is a high-tech kitchen appliance. And ultimately we moved out to Thousand Oaks. And within that time period, it's been 5 years since we moved out here. My kids are now 7. I have twins. I've gone through a divorce and I lost my job that I originally moved out here because they decided to move their offices to Texas, and I have kids that live out here in California. So that is kind of like how the podcast started, which is a long story and very personal one. But that's originally when I decided to start the podcast. Was I realized I was going to be living out here in the Conejo Valley for at least some period of time because my kids were starting to go to elementary school, and part of the reason we originally moved out here was for the school system, as I'm sure you can relate. And I wanted to just connect deeper to living here. Having lived in New York City for 12 years, had, really valued city life and the trappings of that, whether it's a new restaurant opening every day, a cool new bar to check out, an amazing boutique to shop at. And I felt like moving to Thousand Oaks, I was taking some steps back from the life that I really enjoyed and that I really valued. And even just walking everywhere, that obviously becomes a bit challenging out here. So I felt like through the podcast, there was an opportunity for me to just feel more connected and more excited about the community that I was living in. And to go back to where I started the story in terms of starting the podcast and then having this event last year, I was going into 2025 thinking there is this desire from others who wanted to have these in-person connections with people who lived out here. I really saw kind of like these three groups of listeners kind of pop up. There was somebody like me who is new to the Conejo Valley, quote unquote, like didn't have a family relationship here, just moved out here originally for the job, but ultimately to raise a family. And then there's a second group who had been raised out in the Conejo Valley, moved away, whether it be to LA or another city, and then ultimately came back to establish their roots and raise a family. And then there's a third group of listeners who have lived here their whole lives, but are really excited about maybe the growth and the continuing evolution of the Conejo Valley. So those are kind of the three groups. And I recently did a poll to understand more clearly where everybody sits. And surprisingly, actually, to me, there 46%, I think, were like me, newbies who for X or Y reason, moved out to the Conejo Valley. And then the rest of the group was really split between this boomerang group, people who grew up here, moved away, came back, and then the kind of lifers who have always lived out here. And I think ultimately, though, what people want is just like this excitement of living about where they live. And that's ultimately my goal, is to raise my family here and have a good education and the ability to ride their bikes everywhere and all that good stuff. But also, I want to feel excited about living here. I don't want to drive to LA every day to feel like I need to have some level of like culture or taste. So that is inherently why I started Conejo Valley Visionaries. And with the events, I felt that there was this need and desire of myself to have an event that kind of felt like something I would have experienced in New York City and or even in LA, but doing it here so that I could just meet other like-minded folks. And so I set out last year with this idea of starting events, and International Women's Month in March being like the ultimate time to bring people together. And I had interviewed already for the podcast some amazing female founders and started the event with the idea that I would just bring four of those founders together on a panel and have that I'd ask similar questions what had already been on the podcast, but new questions, and also open it up to guests who were there to ask their own questions. And whether you are, run your own business, wanting to start a business, or live out here and like the idea of feeling a little bit more connected with the businesses that you frequent, it was a good opportunity to do that. And I decided to have it be ticketed, but not charge for coming to the event. I really wanted to see if people even would respond to it. And so I set up an Eventbrite. I partnered with Hub 101 in Westlake Village. And I had learned about Hub 101 because in the first year of the podcast, I'd interviewed Dr. Gerhard Apfeltaler, who is the Dean of Business at Cal Lutheran University. And during our podcast, he had introduced me to Hub 101, which is this co-working space in Westlake, which is, to my knowledge, the only co-working space out here. And it's not only available for CLU students to use, but it's really actually intended for the community, for people to use as a co-working space, or also for startup entrepreneurs to come together and feel a connection to other startup entrepreneurs in the area. They offer an accelerator program that you can apply to be a part of if you have a startup and are really trying to like get momentum in your business. There's many businesses or startup founders who have met their business partners there. It just felt like a really smart place to host the event, and they were kind enough to welcome us in and host the event there. And the goal was to have uh, a max of 50 people in attendance, just so that the space could hold it and it felt intimate enough still. And when I created the Eventbrite and had established the panel and started creating like the assets to share about it, could not believe that pretty quickly I was able to quote unquote sell it out, because it was ticketed, but it didn't cost anything to be a part of it. And that was really exciting. And it proved to me that there is this desire. It wasn't just like my idea. We talk about a minimum viable product when it comes to starting something, and just the idea that you have to test and experiment. And so just by starting and getting the event going without having to charge anything, like, would people react to it? Would they actually want to come? So it was super exciting and thrilling that people did want to come. And the event was on a Monday, March 24th last year from 6 to 8 p.m. And the response to it was amazing. We had these four panelists. So Brittany of Face and Soul Studios, Gianna of Made in Italy Bistro, Emily of Proactive Sports, and then Amber McCarthy of 507. I had my friend Jonah, who has an amazing food truck. She stationed herself out there in Nudie Bowl so that people get food. We had Jenna Davis, who runs Davis Creative, did a craft at the end of the event. And then Marissa Myers led us through a grounding meditation to kick off the event. And the feedback that I heard was that people really enjoyed it. I don't like the word networking, and that's definitely not the intention for the event. But ultimately, the result was that people met people they didn't know or maybe had heard of and were able to reconnect. And there's a really fun story with Brittany of Face and Soul. I learned about this only recently, that Lily, who now is an esthetician and she works at Face and Soul now and has a space there, she met Brittany via the Female Founders event last year, ended up becoming Brittany's assistant, and then ultimately now runs her own lash business from there. And this is like, that's why I do this ultimately. Like originally it was selfishly just for me to not be a snob about being like an expat and living here and really figuring out how to like connect deeper. But the fact that there's been collaborations and growth and businesses that have blossomed from this podcast that I run out of the office in my home means so much to me. And that is why I continue to do it. And that is why we are doing this event again this year. I'm a week out right now. It's taking place on March 24th from 6 to 8 p.m. It's a Tuesday this year at Hub 101 again. And this year I wanted to kind of continue to evolve the structure of it and maybe make it bigger, better, whatever it is, but just add a little bit more tangible, practical takeaways for everybody, add like even more reason to come. So this year it's going to be a little bit different. It's structured so that there will be quote unquote like three panels. There will be four guests who have previously been on the podcast, and then a fifth guest who is brand new. It's all going to be recorded and shared on the podcast so that if you're not able to attend, you can listen as well. But there will be Beta and Rachel, who are two physical therapists, and we're actually both each year I've asked for listener nominated guests, and both Beta and Rachel were the listener nominated winners. And they're going to be on a panel together talking a little bit about their business, but importantly, how as business owners, as women, our bodies take a big toll, giving some ideas of like how we can really manage that. Then there will be the second panel with Garcia and Hillary. Garcia owns Ladry with a location in Agora, Ladry Coffee Roasters. And Hillary runs Rabbit and Oaks. She is the maker behind these amazing local inspired uh, tactile things like um, t-shirts and hats, but also art prints and really cool local items. And they're going to talk about the importance of community in their businesses and how that really shapes what they're doing. And then lastly, we'll have Lindsay Calhoun, who is an interior designer. She has Lindsay Calhoun Design, as well as she owns the shop space Haven by LCD in the Wizen Market. And this will be her first time that I've interviewed her. And she'll talk about her path and journey to getting into interior design, how she's grown her business, how it's very local based, and then with this new shop, how she expanded into retail. I'm so excited. Those are like three panels of like dream guests, gonna add so much value. And then the last piece is this breakout session that Desiree and Kristen of Hub 101, who support these founders on a day-to-day basis out of the space. They also run the accelerator program, and they're going to be doing a breakout session for any of you who are interested in starting your own business. Maybe you have a business idea, maybe you've already like gone through some of the first steps. And one of the key parts of the whole process is really understanding what your value proposition is. What do you offer to potential customers? And they are going to help you kind of really like fine tune it and crystallize it. I think any business owner can use that, whether you're early stage or, you've been doing this for a couple years, just like continuing to fine tune what it is that you're doing and who you are trying to attract with your business. Lots of value there. They'll give you frameworks and like really tangible takeaways. So it's going to be different than last year, but dare I say better. I don't know. Both are great and just like hopefully really helpful for everybody. And whether are it's really intended not just for a business owner, not for somebody who is wanting to start a business, although there's going to be so much value for you, but also if you are someone who, like me, wants to just feel a deeper connection to the people in the area, to the businesses that you frequent, this is a great opportunity to do that. And am really, really looking forward to meeting so many new faces. It's really cool because I think last year, as I remember it, most people were buying tickets like two at a time so that they're going to join with a friend, maybe a business owner, whatever, a business partner, excuse me. This year it's been all single tickets, which just goes to show that like you're willing to put yourself out there. You want to meet others. You want to be a part of something bigger. So that's awesome. And most of the people who have RSVP'd and bought tickets are people who I don't know. And that also means so much to me because I thought when I first started this event, it would just be like my friends or people I had some sort of degree of separation from. But no, it's a lot of names and faces who I'm not familiar with. And I get a lot of joy out of meeting everybody. So I'm really thrilled. With 7 days countdown, we still have some tickets left. So I am working to get those last tickets sold. I am charging $15 this year, which feels like a reasonable amount to help support. There'll be a photographer there or a videographer, Andrea, who's going to be capturing the audio and the video to use for the podcast. So I will be using the ticket sales to help support that. And I think, for $15 to come and get a little bit of interaction and learn from others felt like a reasonable price. Always open to your feedback. If you feel differently, feel free to share that with me. So there's a couple more tickets that are going to be sold. I'm also working to finalize tomorrow. I have a site visit on Wednesday. So that'll be 6 days out before a site visit with Hub 101 to really fine tune kind of like the flow of the event, as well as what's going to be going on specifically in the breakout sessions. So some details are to be finalized. I'm also working on the questions for each of the panels, which is so easy to overthink, but how I like to run my interviews is conversational, but it needs a little bit of a loose structure. So I'm working on that. And then we'll do kind of like a pre-call with the panelists just to make sure everybody feels good about what's going to happen next Tuesday. Importantly for me, I am a former fashion girly. I love clothes. So I want to figure out what I'm going to wear for the event. I try to go with kind of like brand colors, which are this pale blue and pink. Sometimes I wear like a beige color. So that still needs to happen. And if I'm going to see if maybe any local businesses want to participate in like a goodie bag, though that is a nice to have, not critical for the event. So that's where we're at 1 week out. I hope maybe this is interesting to you. I am happy to share even more about like the behind the scenes. I might do a little mini series on Instagram if you're not already following at Conejo Valley Visionaries, taking you a little bit more behind the scenes of what is left to do. I get excited to see that kind of thing. And I'm just, excited that 2 years after starting this podcast, there's still this evolution of what Conejo Valley Visionaries is. I get to better understand like what it is that you as a listener or somebody on Instagram wants to be a part of. I love, love, love meeting people from the community, whether it be at this event or for coffee. So if you ever want to just grab a coffee and chat, please send me a DM at Conejo Valley Visionaries, and I will always try to make it work based on schedules. So that is all for this episode. Thank you for listening. If you have made it this far, I really appreciate it. I hope to see you at the second annual Female Founders event, Tuesday, March 24th, 6 to 8 p.m. The link is in my bio at Conejo Valley Visionaries. You can always send me a DM. I can send you the link there. And next time you will hear from me, we'll have a couple other episodes, but there will also be the recording of the event if you weren't able to make it. So thanks for being a listener. Thanks for being a part of this community. And I am excited to hopefully bring more events to life this year. Thank you for listening to Conejo Valley Visionaries. If you like today's episode, make sure to subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen. And don't forget to rate and review us. That's the best way to support the podcast. To enter our giveaways, learn about local events, and to find out more about each guest, follow at Conejo Valley Visionaries on Instagram. If you want to share your visionary story on the podcast, send us an email. We are always open to guest nominations. Email conejovalleyvisionaries@gmail.com. This episode was produced by Cristina Dennstedt and Justin K. Sloan. Conejo Valley Visionaries is edited by Justin K. Sloan and J. Sloan Productions.